Welcome to the Sound of Movement podcast. Today we've got a very special show where we are going to be talking about the road to developing amazing calisthenics and bodyweight skills. Things like handstands, press to handstands, muscle ups, and also gymnastics level flexibility. Stick around for this one. What's up, everyone? It's time to rock. If you're new to the tribe, Rich is behind the mix. Phil's across the table from me. My name's Rad Burmeister, and we are Unity Gym, experts at turning driven people into athletes. This episode is brought to you by the Unified Movement System, the only online program effectively balancing strength, flexibility, and fitness so you can unleash your inner athlete. Get daily coaching by us, plus our epic Foundations Prep program and revolutionary structural balance blueprint to create your ideal program and optimize your performance. As a valued listener, use the link in the description to get your first month free. Also, I'm very excited to announce that today we have launched an epic 72-hour flash sale for all of our masterclasses. We've only done this once or twice before, and it certainly won't be happening for a long time again. This is where you can choose the masterclass that you want and get it at a 50% discount, or if you're a high achiever, you can grab all of our masterclasses and get them for an amazing bundle price. We've got the handstand masterclass, the press to handstand masterclass, the gymnastics rings masterclass, the spine mobility masterclass, the pull-up masterclass, and the flexibility masterclasses. You can grab those by clicking the link in the description, or if you want to go over to Facebook and join the UMS Movement Mastermind, there's a link in there. Now, before we get started, warm welcome if you're on the live stream and in the UMS Movement Mastermind Facebook group. Leave a comment and we'll send you some love. Remember that anyone can join and interact. And lastly, shout out to our YouTube athletes catching the replay. Hit the like button to support the channel and subscribe if you like what you see. Okay, joining us today is Phil White from ADPT Physio. How are you, bro?
Good, Matt. I think this is a nice follow-on from flexibility and strength, because so many people who come into the gym and so many people who are patients of mine are, it's the strength and flexibility are almost a means to an end. So I think it's awesome to talk about this skill development today.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I think there's going to be some nice carryovers as well. Like most people, if you've listened before, know that I'm, while I like my gym training, I also love, like, the main thing that really gets me going is sort of, volleyball and team sports and that kind of thing. So there's some really good takeaways as well for all you people out there who are like me, who just want to know how to get better at a skill. So there's a lot of translation here.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for me, the strength and flexibility component of training is absolutely a means to an end, so much so that I neglected it for a long time, believing that if all I did was train on the specific things that I wanted to do, like, for example, if I just wanted to learn how to do muscle ups, that all I would do is try and do muscle ups. And I learned the hard way that is not the fastest way to get there, that by preparing the body with, raw strength, raw flexibility, and of course, fitness, not so much for the calisthenics skills, but just for keeping your body, healthy and, in a lean physique, that is a massive, massive part of it. But the time comes where if you want to learn how to do calisthenic skills and get really flexible, then obviously you have to work on those things. And that's what our masterclasses are for. Now, all of the masterclasses that we have, handstand, press to handstand, gymnastics rings, which teaches you a muscle up, spine mobility masterclass, and I'm forgetting one, pull-up masterclass, they were all designed by us after we developed the relevant skill ourselves. It started with the flexibility masterclass or the mobility masterclass, because that was the first thing that I started working on. It was the first thing that I said to myself, right, I'm going to really double down on this and I'm going to get flexible. I'm in my mid to late 30s. I think I was 36 or 37 when I started, and I was like, it's time. I'm going to do it. And then after I achieved a pretty good result by most people's standards, we put it together in a program and we started selling it online, and people absolutely loved it. We have thousands of testimonials from people all around the world that use the exact same process to get really flexible and strong at the same time in their adult lives. It was a pretty cool thing to do. And I think that's, personally, I mean, I'm biased, of course, because I'm the person that wrote the programs with Yanni and Richard, but I think that they are better than a lot of other programs that I've seen to do the same thing, because a lot of the skills, when I see people write flexibility programs or gymnastics skills programs, it's often from people that are way better than I am, that learned how to do those things when they were much younger. And unfortunately, the the adult body, speaking from experience, late 30s, early 40s, you just don't respond the same way to training as people do when they're younger. And when I've seen people that are just phenomenal, like childhood athletes, that when they describe their process, I'm like, man, that doesn't work for adults. It's not, an adult body needs a different way of approaching it.
Yeah, and even just that, like, some people just take things for granted. If you've been doing it forever, you just take it for granted what you're doing. And I've really noticed this when, in my journey of getting really into beach volleyball over the last couple of years, we've had a few coaches who are, they're ex-professional or current professional sort of volleyballers who just, they learnt when they were tiny, and it, like, the movement's so natural, and they just like don't get it why you can't do it. And so I found often the best coaches were the ones who'd learned a bit more recently. And after I sort of graduated through all the classes at my beach volleyball school, they asked me if I wanted to come back and be a coach for the sort of like the bottom 3 levels, because I had gone through that experience of knowing what it's like to not know how to do the thing, and then figured out those little nuances and little the things you need to focus on to get better at it. Whereas for people who've been doing it for their whole lives, they just don't know what they don't know.
Yeah. I believe that the best coaches are the people that are only a few steps ahead in the journey from where you are. Now, there's exceptions. Of course, there's exceptions. But my personal experience, I've worked with probably the person that was the most ahead of me that I worked with was my Kung Fu coach, the Sifu, they call it in Chinese. And he was so good, which is why I ended up training with him for over a decade. He was phenomenal, and he'd been doing Kung Fu since he was 4 years old, and he was 12 years older than me. So at the time that I started training with him, he'd already been training for 25 or 26 years. And the way that when I used to ask him, how do I get better at it? The answer was most of the time, just do more of it. Just keep doing it. Don't worry about how you get better at it. Just do more of it. And at the time, I just took it with a grain of salt. But I've learned that it's not the best way to coach people. You really do need to analyze what's going on with your students and break it down for them. And that's absolutely what we did with the skills that we did. Like when I think of the press to handstand for me, out of everything that I can do, it's my proudest achievement. And it's my proudest achievement because I was the furthest from it when I started. When I tried to do a press to handstand and I was explained what is required from it, and my greatest coach for a press to handstand was my friend Aaron McKenzie, who, if you want to look him up on Instagram, he's Origin of Energy. Very good friend of mine. We went to high school together and moved out of home when we were 19 together. And he was learning gymnastics strength through our 20s when I was doing martial arts. So when it came to wanting to learn gymnastics skills, he was the first person that I went to. And when he explained to me what you needed to be able to do and the basic gist of how to do it, I just couldn't even come close to it. I mean, you've had that experience because I've taken you out on the gym floor and done some press to handstand stuff. We did that as a little bit of a laugh for some of our YouTube videos a while ago.
Yep, worth looking up if you want to laugh at me.
Yeah, and that feeling of it, it's the compression strength, right? Like when you try and do compression strength, which is where you basically put your hands on the ground and with your legs straight, you try to lift your legs off the ground. So you're trying to contract the hip flexors when they're already shortened, when they're right at the end of their range.
And it's doing that, it was like I didn't even I knew what you were saying, but I just didn't. It was like there was no connection between.
There's no neural pathway to do it, is there? And all you get is cramps.
Yeah,
cramp city. Yeah, and when I was learning the press to handstand, I got very, very little coaching because Aaron's not a coach of mine; he's a friend of mine. And I only get, back then I was seeing him, only a couple of times a year because we live on other sides of the city, and so he'd just say to me, knowing what my experience was, he'd just give me the roundabout, you just got to get stronger at this. But I didn't have a process in place. So I just worked and worked hard on it. And when I finally did get the press to handstand, Yanni and I were able to look at the other coaches that we'd worked at that helped contribute to us getting them. And then we created this process that we were then able to reproduce the results with our members with. And it works really well because it's, when you're a coach like me, I understand the basic principles of progressive overload and programming and periodization and all these things. And I think that's where a lot of gymnastics coaches and a lot of calisthenics coaches don't have that background and they don't understand how to write an effective program And I can definitely say that I think that's what sets our masterclasses aside from the rest.
Definitely. And what I really like is the fact that it is so modular with the overall program, as in, like, when you're doing this, it's trying to fit in with the rest of the UMS, because when it comes to learning skills, especially in something like gymnastics or calisthenics, it's going to be a component of, as we said at the beginning, you're going to need a certain fundamental amount of, raw strength for the movement. You're going to have a certain amount of flexibility for the movement, but then there is that skill element. So often if you do go and just chase the skill element and neglect the raw strength or the raw flexibility you need for it, you're going to get nowhere. And that's definitely the mistake you were talking about you've made in the past. But yeah, and the kind of other thing with learning a new skill is there's so much cognitive demand when you're learning a new skills, because you, like, as I said, with the press to handstand, you're trying to think about doing something that your body just hasn't done before, so there's no kind of neural connection there. And I found this in a big way with beach volleyball, trying to teach myself how to do a jump serve. Like, the first couple of times I did it, you'd think about one cue, and then you'd try it, and then I've had a few times where it's like you'd throw the ball up and you're focusing so much on the throw that you kind of forget the jump, and the ball just lands you on the head because you're like too busy trying to think about like all the different parts. And so it's all about getting that sort of frequency so that you can start to automate processes and be able to focus on the right stuff. And I think that with the way that the masterclasses fit into the UMS program, you're learning you're practicing and you're drilling lots of relevant skills, strength and flexibility in the regular program. So you're getting that frequency up and you're doing it in a less cognitively demanding state, but then you're also getting that ability to then do these more skill element stuff. So
it's fascinating when you think about the way the body works like that, isn't it? Like, I'm visualizing the beach volleyball, the professional beach volleyball players, and the way that they make that serve just look so effortless. And just even jumping on sand is hard enough.
I wish I'd filmed my journey, because when I was in Western Australia in 43-degree heat, nothing to do, no one to play volleyball against, I just taught myself how to do this in this jump serve in a squash court. I wish I'd just set up a little camera on the wall and then just filmed this journey of fails, because I failed so many times and took it out onto the beach and then failed even more. And it's just been so funny to how badly they've done it, but then over the time it's got to the point where I got quite consistent, and then it was really interesting trying to do it in actual games where there's a bit more pressure, and then it all went to shit again, because it's just you've got that cognitive demand of stress and expectation and other people, not just you by yourself on a squash court. So that's with the skill element where it gets so interesting, is because you've got to be able to perform these skills in a certain context. And often when you're starting out, you might be able to do it under very controlled environments, but then if you're trying to do it while you're and press someone out on the at the park with all your mates, that is something you have to take into account. So by really progressively building up a skill and not just hammering away and just trying to muscle your way through it, you build up that ability to automate processes so that you can get more flexibility about how you do it.
Which is the whole really ties in with the topic today, the title of this show, which is that what I've found works really well is to pick one skill, maybe two max, that you really double down on until you nail it, and then you can move on to the next thing. And I think where a lot of people go wrong is that one of our superstar members here, Dani, who just did the one-arm pull-up recently, and when he started with us several months ago, he couldn't do one-arm pull-up, so I gave him a little bit of coaching on him to get it there. And I was speaking to him just the other day, and he came up and asked me, he said, look, I want to do a human flag now, and I want to do this and I want to do that. And they're all really, really good goals. But my
he's
advice
also training for triathlons.
He's also training for triathlon. Yeah, he's
a beast.
Highest achiever. But my advice to him was, I said, Dani, you're choosing too much at once. You need to figure out what it is that you want to do more than anything, and then we build your training around that. And for somebody like you, I don't recommend more than two skills at once maximum. And he said, oh, really? And he understood it. He understood why. And something that he definitely has as a strength is that he listens to...
So coachable.
Yeah, he's very coachable. He's a really, really good guy. So coachable that when he had a slight niggling injury, I said, go and see Phil straight away, and he just came straight in, and he sees you quite regularly now.
Yeah, no, seeing both Nilesh and I to program, because he's trying to figure out how to do it all at once, and he wants to make sure he doesn't injure himself in the process. So yeah, he's a beast. He's
but
amazing.
the reason why that... and Dani is the kind of guy that trains like 2 or 3 times a day. So you got to ask yourself, how often are you going to train a day? Because when I was working on a press to handstand, there was a couple of other things that I had in my mind of like, okay, one day I want to be able to do this. And so there were things that I was doing that would take me a step closer towards that, but I certainly wasn't focusing on them. The focus was on the press to handstand. And it changes the way that you train because it allows you to more easily decide what you're going to do each day. When you, like if you follow the UMS and the way that we recommend it, you do your press to handstand on either Wednesday or Saturday or both days because they're our straight arm strength days. And then everything else sort of gets built around it. But if you then also start saying, okay, I want to learn how to do a muscle up at the same time, and I also want to learn how to do a flag, and I want to learn how to do a back bridge, you really start blurring the lines of how do you prioritize any of that. And when you don't prioritize anything, then everything just gets watered down in the way you do it.
Yeah, and looking at it like physiologically and kind of scientifically why that won't work is one is going to be about just like, as we talked about yesterday with strength, is that you're going to have with these sort of strength skills, like you're going to be putting a certain amount of stress on the body, a certain amount of load that will impact how you can really peak on some days and recover on others. And if you're trying to go for like lots of frequency, then you're going to be basically diluting your strength and potentially causing overload injuries because you're not giving yourself adequate recovery. But the second thing, which is really specific, which is like specifically about the skills, is that the frequency really matters. And if so basically the studies looking at if you do a whole block of training like the equivalent amount of time all at once or spread out over over the week, and basically like although you might feel like you get lots of improvement by the end of a really long session, if you don't then follow it up quite soon with another like reinforcing sort of attempt at those skills, then you actually hinder your process. Whereas if you can do that same amount of time but spread out over the week, those little bits give your brain a chance to sort of make those connections, and that frequency is one of the most powerful things you can do for skill development. So if you're thinking about trying to achieve 6 different skills at once, then you're going to have like a week in between each of those things, and you won't get that development. And so the best way you can do it is sort of do one and then move on, like really build up that make some progress with that skill, and then move on to the next one after you've made a certain competency. And often it can be like hitting your head against a brick wall with one skill for a long period of time can really actually be quite inefficient, because you kind of get to this point where you sort of stop getting anywhere, and often going away from that skill and then coming back a bit later with a sort of refreshed brain, you've kind of had time to like percolate on it and sort of figure it out. So doing something like working on your press to handstand for a good solid like 6-week block, but then doing a bit of time where you change your focus up and maybe work on the muscle up skill, and then when you come back after 6 weeks then go back to your press to handstand, you often find that you do improve more than you'd expect, even though you haven't really touched it in a long time. That like the brain when learning new skills really does kind of need this processing time. So you want to have like periods of frequency and then a bit of time off and then come back to it. So I really like that idea of sort of cycling between the different skills and but giving yourself enough time on them to really make some benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. And the beautiful thing about it is that once you nail one of these skills, you don't need to work nearly as hard to maintain it. Like I was talking to Phil about this just before the show. The press to handstand, I put so much work into doing it. At first it was just about doing these basic drills daily to try and build up compression strength and a baseline level of flexibility and end range strength, which is really important for the press to handstand. But then once I could feel that I was getting closer to it, I started creating workouts that were around that. And I just used the basic programming principles that I understand, which is to take 72 hours break between each workout. So I would only do it on Wednesday and Saturday. And again, the reason why I did it on those days is because it's a straight arm strength skill, and that's when we do straight arm strength training. And I worked hard for it. Like the workouts that I did went for, I don't know, maybe 45 minutes or so.
They looked awful.
They are so brutal, aren't they? I mean, you had a taste of it just by doing like one set of the exercises.
And then I just watch you while I was having a nice time in the gym and doing my own training, and then watching you like, nah.
Yeah, because you were training here when I was working on the press handstand, weren't you?
Yeah.
And I haven't trained the press to handstand, meaning that I haven't done workouts for the press to handstand for years now. Like it would be at least a year and a half, maybe. I'd say more like 2 years, to be honest. But I can still do it. So if I go out on the gym floor and do literally a 30 or 60 second forward fold stretch just to warm up my posterior chain and allow me to, access that end range, I can do a press to handstand. And if you really think about that, that is pretty amazing, because only 5 years ago or 4 years ago, I couldn't do one at all. Like it just was impossible for me. And then to be able to get it and then maintain it without doing any of the work is very, very cool. So even though we're telling you about all this work that you have to do and that you should only choose one skill and work on it, it's because if you make the decision that you want to get a skill, in my opinion, you want to get it as quickly as possible. Like, what's going to be more valuable for you if you say, I'm going to get all these 5 skills and I'm going to get them in 3 years. And in 3 years, I'm going to be able to do all 5 of them. But for the 3 years leading up to it, you can't do any of them. Would it be more valuable for you if you said, I'm going to do this one skill, but I'm going to get it in 6 months, and then 6 months later, I'm going to get the next one, so that it takes you the same amount of time to get the 5 skills, but every 6 months you can do one of them and you can really do it. That's a much more satisfying journey, in my opinion.
Yeah, an analogy I've heard of, that applies to this in the kind of neuroplasticity space, which I think is perfect for sort of skill development, is basically like, if you think about how a river is formed, if you just if a plain gets absolutely flooded with water, then it will flood, and then it will go back to being a plain. Whereas if a creek starts with like a bit of a trickle and then it gets more water and it constantly gets more water, that will carve the kind of foundations of the actual structure of a river. And so basically, like, that river is the skill that you're trying to develop. And so you've basically carved out that bit of land so that when water comes back to it, like, that river will flow in the same direction. But if you just go from like floodplain to to dry to floodplain to dry, you're not actually carving in those, like, that neuroplasticity, that learning of a skill in a way that your brain can really hold on to. So that's that idea that we just want to have that, like, and feed it enough that you're giving that skill, but you're not just going boom and bust and doing absolutely, like, trying to do too much at once. So if you're trying to learn like 5 skills at once, you're just flooding the plain, whereas we want to, like, build the river and then take the water and build another river. So and then you'll have that long-term ability to access it again. So that's a little analogy for analogies.
I love the analogies. Now, look, anyone that's listening to this, I want to wrap this up. We haven't done a flash sale like this where we offer all of our masterclasses where you can just choose them. Usually when we put one of our programs on at a discounted rate, it's just one program. We're doing it because it's my birthday this month. So Yanni and I were talking yesterday. We haven't been doing any of these sales for a while, and people always email us and say, when's this program going to go on sale again? And we thought, look, it's Rad's birthday, so let's do a couple of flash sales this month. So jump on and grab it, because you won't have the opportunity to choose your own masterclass until the end of the year again, around Christmas. And of course, as always, if you get the program and you don't like it for any reason, we will refund your money, no questions asked, within the first 30 days. So you've got nothing to lose. You can grab it, try it. If you don't like it, let us know and we'll refund you. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I hope you got something out of that. These skills are a lot of fun to develop, and if you do it the right way and you listen to the advice that we gave in this show, then you're going to probably take a hell of a lot less time than it took me to get a press to handstand.
Yeah, and I really hope you do, like, with these takeaways, like, just think it does apply definitely to what we talked about at the master classes, but think about it with also your any other skill that you're developing. Like, you want to hopefully have these principles that you can apply. So
awesome. Thanks, guys. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Health is about performance, not just body image.
You better be willing to accept what you're going to have to do to get there.
We'll start focusing on movement goals, strength goals, flexibility goals.
When you nail that skill, it's there forever.
The body image goal doesn't get you that far.
It's the consistency and frequency that's going to get you there. It's not the intensity.
There's no shortcuts to mastery and movement. Destination doesn't change overnight, but your direction will.
The gym is not the place to beat up the body that you hate. It's the place to build the body that you love.
We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.